It started with a soft creak, almost unnoticeable at first. She had moved into her new apartment just a few weeks ago, a quaint place on the edge of town. The building was old, with creaking floors and walls that seemed to whisper in the night. But on one particular evening, as she lay in bed reading, she heard a sound that made her pause, a slow, deliberate footstep just outside her door. She froze, straining her ears. Another footstep followed, then another, each one closer, inching toward her door. Her heart began to race as the steps stopped directly outside her bedroom. She held her breath, waiting, listening. But all was silent. The next morning, she brushed off the experience as nothing more than her imagination. Perhaps it was the neighbor, or maybe just the old building settling. But as night fell and she lay in bed once more, the footsteps returned. This time, they were louder, more pronounced. She sat up, staring at the door, trying to convince herself it was just her mind playing tricks. Every night, without fail, the footsteps came back, always at the same time. She began to notice a pattern, slow, measured steps that would stop just outside her door and wait, as if expecting her to open it. Her curiosity grew, mixed with a growing sense of dread. She wanted to check, to look outside, but something held her back, a deep, primal fear warning her to stay away. Finally, one night, she decided to confront whatever was out there. Summoning her courage, she tiptoed to the door, holding her breath. She peered through the peephole, expecting to see a shadow, a figure, anything. But all she saw was an empty hallway, stretching into darkness. Confused, she pressed her ear to the door, listening to the silence. Just as she started to pull away, the footsteps resumed, louder, closer. Yet there was no one there. She stumbled back from the door, her skin prickling with unease. Whatever was making those sounds didn't want to be seen, or perhaps couldn't be. Unable to shake the feeling of being watched, she started digging into the building's history. She discovered it had once been a boarding house in the early 1900s, and several incidents had occurred there. Unexplained disappearances, rumors of a tragic accident. One particular story caught her attention. A man had fallen to his death in the stairwell right outside her apartment. Some claimed he hadn't fallen, but was pushed by a malevolent spirit. The more she read, the more disturbed she became. Every tenant who had lived in her apartment had reported hearing footsteps in the hall, all at the same hour, all stopping at their door. Some had seen shadows, others had felt a presence, but no one had ever found the source. Determined to confront whatever was haunting her, she decided to stay up late, waiting by the door. Midnight struck, and right on cue, the footsteps began. She could feel each one reverberate through the floor, sending chills up her spine. The steps stopped outside her door, and with a trembling hand, she opened it. The hallway was empty, just as before, but the air felt colder, heavier, as though something invisible lingered nearby. She whispered into the dark, "Who are you? What do you want?" In response, the air seemed to shift, a faint whisper brushing past her ear, saying, "Let me in." Heart pounding, she slammed the door shut, her hands shaking. The footsteps resumed, this time pacing back and forth outside her door, relentless, growing louder and more erratic. She backed away, clutching her chest, realizing that whatever was outside wanted more than just to be heard. It wanted her to open the door, to let it in. In desperation, she reached out to a paranormal investigator. When he arrived, he sensed an intense energy in the hallway and around her door. "There's something here," he told her, his voice barely a whisper. "It's trapped, caught between worlds, and it wants freedom." He suggested performing a cleansing ritual to help the spirit move on. But as they began, the footsteps grew louder, more aggressive, echoing through the hallway with a force that shook the walls. Shadows twisted and shifted, dark shapes forming in the corner of her vision, and she heard the voice again, whispering, "Let me in," louder and more desperate. The ritual was cut short as the spirit's presence grew too overwhelming. The investigator insisted they leave, warning her that some entities are too powerful to banish. She moved out the next morning, unable to endure another night in that apartment. But even after she left, she swore she could still hear those footsteps in her dreams, following her, always stopping right outside her door, waiting. And so, the footsteps continue to haunt that lonely hallway, waiting for the next soul to arrive, for the next tenant to open the door, to finally let it in.